Good morning. It's a true pleasure to be here from Miami, Florida. It's quite a distance away. What I want to talk about is a process of getting into medical school. It's not a particularly easy thing to accomplish because of the competition. You really need to have a plan, or it's very easy to get clobbered along the way. So what we're going to do this morning is to talk about 12 easy steps that will give you kind of a roadmap of what you're going to need to do to be considered for most medical schools in the United States. Step number one is it really helps to have good grades. There's lots of data available nationally where you can take a look at your science GPA and get an idea of what the odds are that it will be acceptable to get into medical school. Because if you look across the spectrum of medical schools, we know that if you have above a 3.5 GPA, you've got about a 70% chance of being accepted. So that's a pretty high percentage. If, by the same token, your GPA is only a 3.0, it's not the end of the world, but you're down around 20%. And what we want to do is, as we go through these 12 steps, you'll get an idea of just how strong your application is going to be. One of the more important things about grades is you have to make sure that you're taking the correct courses to start with. And early on, you're going to need to take a look at the schools that you're going to be applying to, and take a look at their prerequisite list, and make sure that together, you and your pre-health advisor are making sure that you've had all of those courses, because it's a very easy way not to be accepted is to fail to meet that school's prerequisite requirements. Number two is you ought to try to take as many classes in as competitive a school as possible. A lot of people are tempted to take some of their more difficult classes at less competitive schools, and yet that can really impact on how that works out. There's a wonderful book available, and you can probably get it in the library or look at it even online. It's called Barron's American Profiles of American Colleges. And you can take a look at any college in the United States. And what they do is they rank the competitiveness of that school. Most medical schools will take your GPA and multiply it times a corrective factor that will adjust based upon the competitiveness of the school in which you took your prerequisite course. So again, it's in your very best interest to try to take as many classes as you possibly can in the most competitive school that you're able to take it at. Number two is MCATs are very important. And one of the biggest tips that I like to give people is it's a really good idea to start to prepare for your MCATs as a freshman in college. What you want to do is to get one of the review books, be it Princeton, be it Kaplan, whichever you feel most comfortable with. And as you're going through your biology course, your chemistry course, your physics course, your biochemistry, you take a look at the practice questions that are offered in that MCAT review book. If it turns out that there is a section that hasn't been covered in the curriculum that you're taking, it's a great opportunity for you to meet with your professor after class to make sure, number one, that you have those skills so that you're going to be able to answer those questions, but more important, to bring to his attention that he perhaps ought to revise his curriculum a little bit to make sure that other pre-meds are also going to have all of the skills that they're going to need to be able to answer the MCAT questions that are coming up. The neat thing about this approach, and I don't know how many freshmen we have in the room, but it really makes your life easy because you finish up sophomore or junior year having taken all of the difficult sciences, and you've already prepared for MCATs, and you just start doing the practice exams, and it becomes incredibly easy to get a very, very high score because you've spent the last 3 years trying to do what many of your classmates are going to attempt to do in the last 3 months that they're studying and cramming. Ideally, across the country right now, most schools are looking for at least a 30 MCAT if you want to get yourself a good assurance of getting in. You have to remember that the current MCAT contains 3 major sections: verbal reasoning, biological sciences, and chemical sciences. They are not all equal, but they're all important. Certainly the biological science and the chemical sciences are going to take a look at how well you've acquired the skills needed to answer basic questions in these areas. But the verbal reasoning seems to be even more important because it requires absolutely no knowledge on your part, because you'll be provided with a passage to read through. And what it's going to test is your ability to reason through and logically come to conclusions to be able to answer questions. This is very similar to what happens almost every day in medical school, learning a particular area. So what it does is it directly tests your ability to learn from a passage, so that we like to see at least an 8 in the verbal reasoning section and probably an 8 in all of the sections. One of the things that is a very, very bad mistake is planning to take your MCAT exam before you've had all of the courses that you're going to need to study for that. I mean, you want to make sure you've got your biology, your chemistry, your physics, and now, even more important, your biochemistry, because as we begin to talk about MCAT 2015, and for any of you that are going to be taking that, it appears that about 65% of that exam is biochemistry. And that is something that is incredibly important for you to have mastered and be ready to take. One of the things that I can tell you, as being a dean of admissions for the past 20 years in 2 different medical schools, I have yet to meet a student who was satisfied with their MCAT score the first time they took it. And for that reason, what I like to advise people is take your MCAT exam at a time in which you'll have a second opportunity, if necessary, to retake the exam. The vast majority of people who take it a second time will improve upon their score from the first time, simply because they'll become more familiar with the process. They'll have an idea of what the exam is like and how it's stressing things. You can take all of the practice exams you want in the world, but it's not like the real thing, because the real thing, you're going to have to deal with the nerves and everything else that goes along with a high-stakes exam. There are some wonderful books available that you can get in the library, you can get online, and again, it's a wonderful investment to have these things when you're taking the particular course. Now, one of the things that I also recommend is that you're going to have to be preparing a personal statement. And the personal statement is going to ask you about one of the most important events that you've observed or been part of that helped you to decide on a career in medicine. And you'll have to then write about 1 page or 2 pages. It's an excellent thing to do is to work on that during the time that you have your English course. Get your professor to work with you, and we'll talk a little bit more about personal statements that have made a difference and some of the tips that can help you to make that a much stronger component. Let's talk a little bit about 2015 and that new exam.
Hi, my name is Katie Spina. I'm a medical student at Boston University School of Medicine.
Hi, my name is Richie Silla. I'm a resident at Kaiser Permanente, Santa Clara. So Katie, why don't you tell us about your experiences with the MCAT?
Sure. So after finishing my undergraduate degree in chemistry, I was pretty nervous and I didn't feel quite ready for the MCAT. So I took time to study and take a prep course, which made me feel much better. And by the time I took the MCAT, I felt prepared.
I took a slightly different approach. A friend of mine and I decided to study together 3 times a week in the evenings, and then on Saturdays we'd take a full-length practice exam. And that way when test day came, it was just like any other day to us.
So if you're thinking of taking the MCAT in 2015, you could be one of the first to take the new exam.
The MCAT exam has to keep up with the field of medicine, which changes rapidly. The doctors I work with and doctors everywhere today have to face a much more diverse and senior population than yesterday's doctors did. And the MCAT exam is one of the tools that medical schools use in order to make sure that you're walking through their doors prepared to learn.
So here's the breakdown. There are 4 sections. For each section, you'll receive a separate score.
The first 3 sections are science-based. The first 2 cover natural sciences, and the third covers social and behavioral sciences concepts.
You can get the knowledge and skills you need for the science sections by taking the following courses at your college: Introductory Sequence in Biology, General Chemistry, Organic Chemistry, Physics, also 1 semester of Biochemistry, Sociology, and Psychology. But check with an advisor at your school to make sure that's true for you too.
Then there's the critical analysis and reasoning skills section, which is different from the others. What it doesn't do is test any specific topic or subject area. What it does do is test whether or not you have the reasoning and analysis skills you'll need in medical school.
The critical analysis and reasoning skills section requires that you read passages and answer questions. This section tests your ability to comprehend, evaluate, and utilize information from the passages. These sections cover the topics of social sciences and humanities, including ethics and cross-cultural studies.
You can get more details about the new MCAT on the website www.aamc.org/MCAT 2015.
And you can download the preview guide for the MCAT 2015 on the website. The preview guide explains how the exam works, the content covered, and the skills tested. It also includes topic lists and sample questions. Really everything you need.
2 more reasons to visit the website. 1, the topic lists are being tweaked and refined between now and the 2015 release date for the new exam, and the website is where you'll find updates and additional information. 2, the AAMC is developing new prep materials to help you with the new exam, and these will be found also on the website.
So let's recap. If we survive the MCAT, you can too. It's hard, but if it's your dream to be a doctor, it's worth it.
The MCAT exam is changing, and everything you need to know about the new exam, how it changed, why it changed, can be found on the website.
So start early, study hard, and take advantage of the tools and prep materials offered by the AAMC. And you too can become a physician in training.
Good luck.
It's a great website to take a look at, again, early on. And what you want to remember, 4 sections, 4 scores. The other thing is that the exam is going to now be 2 hours longer. So once what was a very grueling exam, well, I haven't even come up with adjectives that describe what that's going to be all about. But I imagine I would definitely plan to have the next day off afterwards. Again, the 4 sections are outlined here, and you want to make sure that you're well prepared for each of them, because it, again, is step number 2 in that road to getting into medical school. Number 3 is a little bit easier, but something that you often overlook because we all tend to be procrastinators. And I think it's the Nike commercial that says if you're not fast, you're food. Well, that has a lot to do with applying to medical schools. It's almost like Christmas shopping. If you wait until the last minute, it's going to be real crowded, and you may find that the stores are completely empty. Well, that's very analogous to what can happen in medical school. What we like to tell people is have all of the ducks in a row and have your primary AMCAS application submitted on that very first day that you're able to do that, which is usually on June 1. Generally, when you submit your AMCAS application, if you're good about getting it in early, a lot of the schools will send out your secondaries often within 4 or 5 days of you submitting your AMCAS application. Now remember that AMCAS has to verify and process your application. That can take anywhere between 2 weeks early on to 6 weeks if you wait until later in the year. So again, one of the major advantages is if you submit it early, AMCAS is going to verify and process it a lot sooner than if it gets submitted with 12,000 other applications on that same day. Now, to have everything ready and all your ducks in a row, you want to make sure that your letters of recommendation are all completed and ready to go well before the summer. You want to make sure your pre-med advisor is there. If you're going to get a composite letter from the school, that's all ready to go. If you've decided upon who your other letter writers are going to be, that they're all ready to go. And we'll talk more about that as we move through the lecture. Remember, most medical schools start to take a look at applications very early on in September, usually to begin to invite folks for interviews. So again, it's much easier to be 1 in 1,500 applications than to be 1 in 7,000 applications as you get later into the year. There is a major advantage to applying early. Make a plan, leave yourself all of the time that you're going to need. Step number 3, apply early. Step number 4 is carefully select the people that you want to write your letters of recommendation. Now, most schools will have something called a composite letter. And the composite letter generally will be a composite of recommendations from all of your science professors with an additional add-on from your pre-med advisor. And they'll let us know how they feel you did in comparison to all of the other pre-med students graduating from your particular college. You are also going to want to submit a couple supplemental letters in addition to your pre-med letter. And I generally like to see these letters coming from one person that has been involved with your clinical experience, shadowing, volunteering. Someone that's going to be able to comment on your work ethic, on your morals, on your enthusiasm, for your interest, and for your commitment to the practice of medicine. These are all of the things that we want to see written down, well described, and it's going to make the difference between a well-composed letter, what looks to be a form letter, or what looks to be a letter from a professor who barely knows who you are. When we're talking about getting into medical school, step number 4 is incredibly important. The letters of recommendations are going to be one-on-one opinions that are absolutely going to be confidential so that that person can say anything they want to you. We do get letters that are very, very short. I've gotten a few of them this year. Don't even think about this applicant. That's the letter. That's not the kind of letter that you want to have written. So that you want to make sure that the person knows you and thinks pretty highly of you. Now, we said that one of those letters should come from somebody that knows of your clinical experiences. If you've done research, if you've done community service, if you've got leadership experience, these are all excellent secondary letters that ought to be submitted in addition to that composite. Most medical schools will accept between 3 and 5 additional letters that will help, again, to support your application. And that's number 4. Number 5 is everyone that is in the profession of medicine realizes that the profession is not exactly where we want it to be. We're having difficulty with the attorneys, we're having difficulty with insurance companies, we're having difficulty with too many patients, where in a given day, the average physician is forced to work at a much quicker pace than normal. For this to change, medical schools are going to have to graduate a new generation of leaders in medicine. So medical schools are all looking for students that have already demonstrated leadership skills. As you're in college, make an opportunity, make an effort to be a leader. Be an officer of organizations. If you're involved with sports or athletics, try to be a captain or a co-captain. Strive to become familiar with the traits exhibited by good leadership. Try to learn the various examples of leadership styles and know your style. And be ready on the day of interview to talk about days or situations where you've had to exhibit leadership properties. That's number 5. Number 6 is your exposure to the healthcare system. And most medical schools are looking to make sure that you have seen enough of the practice of medicine to know what you're going to be getting into, to have an understanding of what life is going to be like as a physician. When we evaluate clinical experiences, we use a very simple test. Has the student seen enough of the practice of medicine to understand what it's going to be like to be a practicing physician? We want to make sure that you understand that patient-physician relationship, that you've witnessed it, that you're familiar with the various challenges that today's physician faces. We like to tell people to volunteer in hospitals, in doctor's office, to get an opportunity to see what it's like to be a physician. If you have a volunteering experience and they assign you a paperwork task, or you're doing nothing more than transporting patients around the hospital or feeding patients, that's not going to show you what it's going to be like as a physician. That's doing somebody's busy work. That's an opportunity for you to say, this is not what I'm here for. I'm here to learn about the practice of medicine and to observe that patient-physician relationship. Find yourself another site, because one of the things that medical schools are going to do is to make sure that you know what you're getting into. Because when you get to medical school and residency, you're going to work harder than you've ever worked in your life. And what you'll want to do is to make sure that you really, really love it and have a passion for medicine. So number 6 is exposure to the healthcare industry. Number 7 is recognizing that medical schools are being inundated with applications. At the University of Miami, we've already received 7,000 applications this year for roughly 100 available seats. What we're going to do is go through all those, and we're likely to find 1,000 applicants who meet all of our criteria. And yet we have to find a way to get from 1,000 to 100. And what we usually use for this is the applicant's life experiences. And we find some truly amazing applicants within our applicant pool who have met all of the other criteria. Last year, we admitted a couple Navy SEALs, we got a couple F.A.A.C.T fighter pilots, we got a couple folks that were musicians with the New York Philharmonic Orchestra, people that have done some really neat things, athletes, authors, musicians, dancers, people that in addition to going to college have excelled in something else where they're going to add to the culture of our class. All of these things that add culture to the class will also expand upon your ability to practice medicine. Now, these are all kind of extremes. Many of us probably didn't have those kinds of experiences, but you have to take a look back, do some self-reflection, and take a look at some of the accomplishments that you have had in your life. And make a little list. What are the 3 greatest things that I have done in my short life? Examples of having to overcome adversity when confronted with a difficult situation or a difficult set of cards where you've had to work very, very hard to overcome a major obstacle. A situation where you've had to work very, very hard to achieve a goal. Or a situation in which you were able to help another person to overcome their particular goal or their particular adversity. These are all things that demonstrate your caringness, your compassion, your life experiences, and that's number 7 on our hit list of things to get you into medical school. Make sure you don't forget to tell us about something that you have done that is totally amazing. Lots of times, just because we didn't ask about it doesn't mean that you can't find a way to let us know that you've done something truly remarkable. And most of the times on secondary applications, there'll be at least one opportunity in an open-ended question where you can show your leadership, or a life experience that is really going to make a difference. Number 8 is writing a good personal statement. Again, when we're talking about the difficult times of competition for medical schools, every once in a while you see a personal statement that is so outstanding, that tells you so much about the applicant and about who they are as a person, that you almost don't want to look at any other thing in the application. It gets that wow factor very, very quickly. After reading the statement, you want to be able to know a lot about the applicant and about those things that are important to that person. Obviously, no spelling and no grammatical errors. I like to tell people to begin to prepare their personal statement months in advance of submitting it. Write it, put it in an envelope, stick it in the top drawer. Don't look at it for a few weeks. Then take it out and see if you still like it. See if you want to revise it. And then show 3 or 4 of your best friends and see if they think it really reflects who you are as a person. Seek professional help. If you have an English professor, there's nothing wrong with getting some help to make sure that you've written it in the best possible way. Now, don't plagiarize. There is a wonderful opportunity on the website to go and purchase all of these amazing personal statements. They're there. I have them all. They're great. And it's one of the easiest ways to make your application hit that trash can real early on, is for me to recognize that personal statement. Make sure it's interesting and make sure it's well organized. Well, people often look at me and say, you know, I'm kind of a science major. English and writing and history were never my greatest strengths. Can you give me some more help on that? I found a wonderful little book that's available online, put out by Princeton Review, that is a composite of some of these personal statements that have been written where deans of admissions across the country have said, this is one of those personal statements that had that wow factor, that when I read it, I didn't want to look at the rest of the application. I just wanted to accept the applicant because it jumped off the page telling me that this person knows what medicine is all about and has their head on their shoulders and knows the direction they're going. This might be a nice investment. Lots of times if you're in a pre-med organization, it would be a nice little book for that organization to have in their library for people to read and take a look at how people have approached this in the past. We've talked about quite a number of factors at this point. And what I want to do is to show with you kind of the system that we use at the University of Miami. And I see that the slide's being cut off a little bit with the size, but I'll go through the bottom part that you right now can't see. And what I like to do is to show you the point totals above and below the line that we use to evaluate applicants. Life experiences will be reviewed by 3 members of our admissions committee. They can assign between 1 and 15 points to give you a total of 45 points. Patient care experiences, again, 3 reviewers between 1 and 20 points to give you 60 points. So far, if you're running total, 105 points above the line. Your letters of recommendations, again, anywhere between 5 and 15 points. 3 reviewers, another 45 points, takes you up to 150. Life adversity or diversity will give you between 0 and 10 points, giving you another 30 or possible of 180 points that so far have absolutely nothing to do with grades or MCATs. Now we'll take a look at below the line, and you'll see that the quality of the academic institution that you took your courses at will be scaled between 3 and 30 points. You get 30 points there. The next one will be your GPA, and that will get you between 3 and 30 points. The last one will be your MCATs, will get you between 0 and 45 points. So you can see 45, 30, 30, 105 points are your academics, 180 points are those things that you're doing that are non-related to grades. So what it shows is that you can have very, very, very good grades and end up with not half the points that you need to score very well. You can do some amazing things up top and have grades that aren't quite so perfect and yet still come out with a very, very good opportunity to be able to get into medical school. This is that holistic review process. This is that well-roundedness process that many medical schools are now using. Now let's take it to the next step. Let's get to the interview, because you can do all this wonderful stuff and then end up at interview day and have it be a total disaster, and then everything goes for naught. So there's some things that you need to do to make sure that that interview is going to be very, very well received. Number 9, I call dress to impress. And I like to refer to the test of that as the grandmother or grandfather test. When you prepare for your interview and you select your outfit, if your grandmother or your grandfather comments at how handsome and sharp you look today, you got it. You're right on target. Most of the people that are interviewers are in that grandmother, grandfather age group. They're not looking for cool. They're not looking for hot. They're not looking for the latest styles. They're looking for professional. You want to be very conservative and very tasteful in your attire. The shoes that you select have to be able to go for what often is a 1-mile walk around medical campuses. They're very large. I am absolutely impressed with the shoes that some women are wearing today. I am happy that I never, ever, ever had to put one of those things on my feet. I would break my ankle in less than an hour. It's probably not a good idea to wear those super high heels. You're going to be going on a long walk, and what we've gotten used to doing is putting a box of Band-Aids on that interview table, because often when the students bring back those that have been out interviewing around campus, they're often into that box. So you want to make sure that the shoes that you're wearing on interview day are going to allow you to keep a smile on your face. You don't want your feet to hurt or be bleeding or some other horrible catastrophe. It goes the same thing with guys, and we all hope that you would be wanting to set a good impression on interview day. So everybody goes out and buys a nice new pair of shoes. Well, maybe the nice new pair of shoes aren't the most comfortable things in the world. Maybe they need to be broken in a little bit, because a lot of times when I put on a new pair of shoes, I get to about 10 o'clock that morning and say, man, these things hurt. What was I thinking when I bought these? They didn't feel like this in the store. So you want to make sure that the shoes you're wearing are kind of road tested, and you want to be able to get out and walk around. Now, I come from the University of Miami, and we are notorious for absolutely beautiful sunny weather. We have sunshine almost 360 days a year. Our temperatures range absolutely beautiful in the wintertime. It's usually in the 60s or 70s. In the summer, it can get up into the mid-90s. It rarely gets above that. One of the things about Miami, though, is that the humidity is normally well into 90%. You will not dry out in Miami. It's very, very cool inside. We've got lots of great air conditioning, but then you go outside and it's hot and humid as the devil. What you want to do is to make sure that you have attire that's going to fit the climate of the school that you're going to be interviewing. Obviously, what you would wear to the University of Michigan, the other UM, versus the University of Miami would have to be very different and very temperature dependent. You look kind of strange when you show up in the interview with sweaters and a heavy jacket in Miami. You don't show up that with Michigan, they think you're going to freeze to death on their tour. Be aware of the temperature and wear temperature appropriate clothing. It's all part of professional judgment. Minimal jewelry. You need to be very, very, very professional looking. Your hair, your nails, everything clean, but nothing super modern. Again, number 9 is remember the grandmother, grandfather test. Number 10 is anticipate the questions that you're going to be asked during the interview. You want to make sure that you know about the school that you're going to and why you want to attend there. You should be familiar with the type of questions that are asked on medical school interviews. You may want to talk to some people that have gone through the process already. You may want to look online, or you may just want to use some common sense. I can guarantee you're going to be asked, why do you want to be a physician? I can guarantee you're going to be asked, why do you want to go to this medical school? Irrespective of where you interview, you have to have those answers. And boy, it makes that interview so much easier if you've already thought out the answer, because get through this one in a hurry, okay? The next thing that you're going to be asked are behavioral questions. And these are the kind of the new world of interviewing. And what this does is it reflects situations where you're asked how you would respond to a particularly difficult situation. It might be what you would say to a combative patient in an emergency department, what you would say to a triage nurse in an emergency department when you see her put the chart of a close friend on top of a lot of other charts when, based upon that person's acuity, it should have been on the bottom. What you would say to someone in the hospital that is saying something inappropriate about a patient, how you would deal with those particular situations. So what it does is it reflects upon your ability to show how you would behaviorally respond to some difficult situations. You're also going to be asked to think about some thought-provocative questions. I can guarantee you, right up there with why do you want to be a physician and why do you want to go to this medical school, that you're going to be asked a question about the Affordable Health Care Act and the impact that it's going to have on today's practicing physicians, both inner city and rural. So again, something that you ought to prepare in advance. If you don't know about Obamacare or the Affordable Health Care, you better start reading because it's going to be asked. One of the things that really helps to polish up a person's interview skills is practice. If you have a pre-med organization, it should be an opportunity for you to get together with other students, perhaps with other faculty members that commonly interview people and have practice sessions. The more times you practice going under the gun of an interview, the better the times you will feel when you have to do it for real. Number 10 is practice, practice, practice. Number 11, know about the school that you've applied to. Understand their strengths, their weaknesses, their expectations. You need to know 4 things, 3 C's and an R: their curriculum, their clinical experiences, their research opportunity, and their community outreach. These are things that if you are unable to find the information on the website, you may want to turn it around and make sure that you ask a question about the school's opportunity to provide these 4 things. Remember the 3 C's and the R. Know about the school. Most medical schools have very, very well-developed websites. You want to make sure that you've toured that website, and you want to make sure you do that the night before you have an interview at that school to refresh your memory about their strengths and about their weaknesses. If we take a look at the UM campus, some of the things you'd find is we're a very large medical school in the city of Miami. We're very, very close to the beach. It's a beautiful, beautiful environment. We're surrounded by 3 major medical centers so that our students do training right on the campus site: Jackson Memorial, Miami Veterans Administration, and the new University of Miami Hospital are our primary training sites. We have a large research quadrangle, and our area of super specialization is probably ophthalmology. We're the #1 ophthalmology residency and the #1 eye hospital in the nation. Now, what did it look like in 2013? Well, last year we had 7,100 applicants. We've already had that this year. We sent out secondaries to about half of the people that applied. Now, how do we do that? Well, there's some things that will get you thrown out very quickly. Number one is a criminal record. If you've had a felony, you might as well save your money. You're not going to be able to get your license in the state of Florida. If you've had a misdemeanor, you have to take a look what it was. If it's a speeding ticket through a school zone, we're probably going to ignore it. If it's petty theft or some other crime of really poor judgment, it all depends on how the person in the admissions committee reviews it. We also take a look at minimal GPAs and minimal MCATs and kind of get rid of the ones that we don't think people have a chance in the world of being able to get in. And what we'll do is we'll take a look at the application very quickly and sort out those that we think are viable applicants. We'll then have to go from 3,500 to make that huge jump down to 500 people that we'll interview. Once you get to the interview level, you've really made it down pretty close to where you're going to need to be, because we'll generally offer acceptances to about 315, 316 people each year. We have to accept more people than will actually matriculate, because of the people that we accept, a large number of them will have acceptances at other medical schools. And when it ultimately comes down to the beginning, that first day of class will be down from 7,100 all the way down to 198. Of the things that you need to know about a particular school is I would certainly start out with their mission statement. Now, this is the example that I give you that is our mission statement, really showing those things that we are all about. Obviously, medical education, about research, about providing high-quality patient care, and about being a community partner, being able to help those folks in our community. And we define our community as not only being South Florida, but into the Caribbean, into South America, into Europe, into India, and into China. We have a tremendous number of mission trips. Our average students go out of the country between 3 and 4 times during their 4 years that they're with us to do part of their study in an international location for a week or two as part of their training. The values can very easily be found in something else that you want to have in your knowledge base about that school. Compassion, discovery, collaboration, leadership, and integrity are those things that we feel are very important for every physician to have, and they'll be part of the fabric of our education. Number 12, interview day comes along. Be on time, be polite, be courteous to everyone on that day. One of the things that happens on interview day is that you're going to show up in this beautiful black or navy blue suit or pants dress or whatever. You're going to stand out on medical campus. Nobody dresses like that on a day-to-day basis. The docs are in white coats and scrubs. The nurses are in scrubs or in their normal whites. So you're going to be very obvious to everybody that's there that you're there interviewing in the medical school. When you wear that dark clothing, everybody knows exactly what you're doing. You've got to be a nice person. I mean, you don't want to be cranky to the person in the cafeteria or to the person at the door or the person in the parking lot, because they're going to know that you're there interviewing, and they're going to pick up the phone and call the admissions office and say, you know, you need to look out for this one. This is what just happened. So from that day, from the minute your feet hit the ground, you need to be a nice person. Some medical schools will actually set things up where they'll have a very pregnant woman with a couple packages and a couple kids trying to get into the front door of the medical school, just as you're happening to come up upon the door. And they want to see, what do you do? Do you take a minute to help her get in, or do you just rush off to your interview and let her struggle with her kids and her packages and that very heavy door? When you get to interview, make sure that you ask questions of the students that are there. Take a look at how they look. Are they happy? Are they enjoying it? They're going to be your best source of information. So always have lots and lots of questions. The goal is to be in that class on opening day, and that hopefully is all of your goals. And at this point, I'd like to open up for any questions that people might have about getting into medical school. And again, thank you for your attention. Okay. Okay, the question is, how do we evaluate PostBack Quest courses? We generally take a look at the reason that you're taking the PostBack program. Some people do it to strengthen their application. Other people use it to fulfill or to replace a goal that once was weak. What PostBack programs do is they don't erase what they've done in the past. They just show that you really can do the work. So that I would not start out by wanting to take a PostBack program or start out by wanting to take a master's program. There are lots of things that you can do in research or experience so that PostBack programs are looked at for what they're at. They're often a second chance, or they're used to strengthen an application. They are, or they can be very valuable, or they cannot be very valuable. Okay? Well, what happens is a lot of students improve as they go through, so that what we like to see is a generally improvement trend where they've started out, and a lot of people have a difficult time in freshman year and yet get gradually stronger in sophomore and junior and then senior year. If that's the case, that's probably perfectly acceptable. And so that's an upward. What we don't want to see is a downward progression where you started out wonderfully as a freshman, and by the time you got to a senior, you're just about passing. That's a disaster. Okay? Yeah, they take a look at everything. I'm sorry. What happens is that we put a little bit more credence in the MCAT because it levels the field where everybody in the country is going to have to take that same thing. And that's based upon the premise that the MCAT is testing those areas and those subjects that you're going to need to have as a basic foundation. It's very, very difficult, even with Barron's, to compare one school to another. And you know it, even within schools, there are professors that are a lot easier to take a particular course than others. There are professors that are notorious for giving A's to everybody, and everybody kind of flocks to them. So for that reason, the MCAT really levels the playing field, and we believe that for that reason, we think it should have just a little bit more credence than the grades. Now, both of them are very important. And without either of them being strong, you're putting yourself at a big disadvantage. Okay. Sure. For about 3 years, the question is, with the new MCAT versus the old, are we going to view them differently? We probably are going to have to view them differently because they're going to be very different exams. Now, what we will do is we will continue to accept any MCAT until it's 3 years of age. On the date that it becomes 3 years old, it's no longer, we refer to as a valid exam. So there's going to be that period of time where we're going to have applicants that have the old score versus applicants that have the new score. And I think that if an applicant has done very well or very poorly on either, it's going to be easy to use it. But if the applicant is kind of in the middle, then we're going to have to kind of weigh it. Now, I think everybody is under the premise that the new MCAT, because of all of the revisions, may be a little bit more accurate than the old MCAT. So if an applicant has taken the old and then has to take the new to repeat it, we probably will use the new over the old. Okay? Okay, the average age at our school is 23.9 years of age. Now, you have to take that with one little correction factor, and that is that we are accepting about 20 students each year from our undergraduate honors program in medicine. That is a 3-year undergraduate before you come in. So that those students often are in their early 20s when they start medical school, and that kind of shifts it. What you may want to be interested in is more of our range. Our youngest student this year was 18 years of age, and our oldest was 40. Yeah. It's the third medical school that I've actually been involved with, and I think the clinical experience and opportunities that students have. Our campus, the medical school, is located among 3 giant medical complexes: Jackson Memorial, University of Miami Hospital, and Miami Veterans Administration. The faculty of the medical schools are the attendings in those hospitals. A student with an interest in any of the specialties can go into any of the 3 hospitals 24 hours a day and find a faculty mentor that would be absolutely thrilled for you to go be in the emergency room, to go deliver babies, to go up and do surgery, to work in the ICU, to work in radiology, to work in pathology, whatever is your particular area of interest. 24 hours a day, you have clinical experience available to you. So it's just a matter of your time management and how much time you want to put into actually taking care of patients. Okay? What happens is that the question was, how do we evaluate GPAs when the applicant has attended multiple different colleges? Is what we will do is to take the prerequisite courses from each of those schools and multiply that times the correction factor for the competitiveness of that school, and then add it all together to come up with a final composite point value. We have a lot of students that will be enrolled at some major university and then take a couple summer courses at a lesser school. They lose points on doing that, but it still all gets added in. Okay. Let me take one from over here. I'm sorry. Unfortunately, at this time, we're not accepting international students. With 7,000 applicants from the United States, it's very, very difficult for us to expand beyond that right now. Okay. We take a look at the undergraduate school that you've attended and look at its competitiveness. And we use Barron's profiles of American colleges right now to take a look at the competitiveness of that school. And what that does is it allows us to balance the grades a little bit, so that what you want to do is to take a look at the reputation of the school, the ranking of that school. And the higher ranked and the more competitive the school is, the more valuable your grades are out of that institution. I think every medical school in the country takes a look at the competitiveness. You have to, because even among the schools, it's known that there are certain colleges that their bell curve, the average person in that class gets a C. And there are other schools where 95% of the people in that class get an A. You can't value those 2 programs the same. Oh, got one over here. If you transfer it from one college to another, okay, what happens is that generally community colleges, and we will allow you to take, I believe, up to about 35 to 40% of your classes as a maximum in a community college. So that what happens is that at that community college, the competitiveness of that school is probably far lower than the school that you've transferred in, the college or the university, so that the factor that that A or that B gets multiplied for the community college will be very much lower than the correction factor that grade, that A or that B gets multiplied to at UC Davis. Okay? If you have an overabundance of your prerequisite courses having been taken at a community college or a junior college, I would highly recommend that you either do a master's or a post-bac to repeat those and show the more competitive college. What happens is that's a situation in which we'll use the MCAT to kind of level the field. And what happens is that if you're, for example, your chemistry course, your organic chemistry course is 9 years old, and you come and you say, well, I got a 12 in the MCAT in chemical sciences, I don't care. Obviously you remember every single bit of it, or you've been practicing as a chemist for the last 12 years, and making you take that course again would be ridiculous. You show me a biology course that you took 10 years ago, and you show me that you got a 6 in the biological sciences, I'm going to say, I think you may have forgotten a little bit of this. It might be a good time to refresh. So, use the MCAT to level the field there. Right. That's great. That's fine. And we love to have people that are coming from other professions that have kind of non-traditional students. They add tremendously to the practice of medicine and the culture of the class. So that's something that's actually looked at as a positive. Almost equally. Generally, the master's program tend to be a little bit longer than the post-bac programs. And the master's programs will also allow you to get a master's degree in a particular area where the post-bac may not give you an additional degree. So it depends on what you're doing it with. If you get a master's in biochemistry or a master's in genetics or immunology, that's going to be tremendously valuable to your, probably one last? Yeah. Yeah, it's usually taken under the umbrella of the college or university where it's held at. Yep. Okay. Thank you very much for your attention.